Welcome to the Radiant Energy Summits, where you'll learn the top insights and strategies for nurturing and optimizing your energy on all levels of your being. Today, our guest is Alberto Villoldo. He's a medical anthropologist, psychologist, and shaman who studied with the spiritual practices of the Amazon and the Andes for more than 30 years. He's the founder of the Four Winds Society, and he instructs individuals throughout the world in all practices of energy medicine. Dr. Villoldo has written numerous best-selling books, including Power Up Your Brain, Shaman, Healer, and Sage, and the Wall Street Journal bestseller, One Spirit Medicine. Welcome, Alberto.
Thank you, Paul. Good to be with you.
It's a joy to have you today. Let's start out with what started you on your journey. In other words, you know where you are today, but what were the big obstacles that were set in your path that you had to overcome?
Well, Paul, I started out as a medical anthropologist. So I was trained in anthropology, but I somehow ended up working at San Francisco State University in a brain laboratory. And we were trying to see if we could create psychosomatic health and not only psychosomatic disease. And after a couple of years of work and looking at the brain, I decided I was looking out of the wrong end of the microscope, that I had to get bigger and bigger instead of smaller and smaller if I were to understand the mind and how the mind can create miracles, literally. So I went to the Amazon. I went to the jungle where there were no MRIs and no technology. And what you had was the spirit and, of course, what we call the mind. But for the shaman, spirit and mind are kind of one and the same. Studying people that didn't have MRIs, that didn't have imaging, that didn't have X-rays, that they had no technology. All they had was the power of the mind and medicine plants, some amazing plants that I want to talk to you about later. So I got to spend years learning from these indigenous healers how the mind not only heals the body, it actually creates the body, organizes the body into health or disease. And not only that, but it organizes your reality, the nature of the people you meet and you end up working with or marrying. It was a whole different cosmology to the one that I grew up with and that I ended up then spending the next 30 years of my life studying.
Beautiful. So when you say those two phrases, that the mind doesn't just heal the body, it also creates the body, can you expand on that just a little bit more?
Well, the mind doesn't only create psychosomatic disease. We know, in fact, let me take it back a little further. We know that the most powerful effect in medicine is the placebo.
Yes.
And every medication is tested against a placebo. For example, morphine, a placebo is 89% as effective as morphine, and 94% as effective as Viagra. It's extraordinary. Well, we call this an accident, that we're tricking the body. You're not tricking the body. The body knows when you take a sugar pill. So the body's participating with the mind
Yes.
in creating disease or health.
Good.
So what the shamans learned to do was to use this mechanism consciously to trigger disease. Or if you went to see a sorcerer, a black magician, they could kill you simply by using their own power of mind to activate one of your own self-destructive belief systems.
Yes. So in this situation where, like the question that's coming to me, Alberto, is when people study the mind in the West, that's the left brain. That's, the do more, get more, achieve more, manifesting, all that sort of stuff. And that, I don't think that's what you mean by the mind, is it?
No, the mind is very difficult to define. The body has all of its parts. The mind has really been studied much better in the East by the Buddhists and the Tibetans and the Hindus than we have in the West. We study the brain in the West, but we don't know what the mind is or where it's located.
Yes.
But for the Eastern traditions, if you ask a Tibetan Buddhist, they say, mind is all there is. Everything is a manifestation of mind. So they mean obviously something much bigger than we do when we talk about mind.
Yes.
We think the mind for us in the West is inside the brain and the body. But for the shaman, the mind actually is the energy field. So it's not the physical body. It occupies the physical body, creates health for the body, can regulate the body. The mind can trigger systems in the body through hypnosis, for example. But the mind also extends beyond the physical body in the luminous energy field. And this field is the part of us that continues beyond death into our life, until we are born again in this earth. So this is the luminous body that is the vessel for consciousness in between births, in these realms beyond death.
So your definition of the luminous energy field, again, is?
Well, the luminous energy field is what we call the aura. It envelops the physical body, and there are two parts to it. We know that the body has very long nerves that conduct electricity. In fact, the body has more than 100,000 miles of nerves, if you were to put them end to end. And all of these cables are running up and down the body from the brain to the feet and back. So these electrical cables create a magnetic field around it. And this is, 10th grade physics. There's always a magnetic field around a cable that conducts electricity.
Yes.
So this is a biological field. And this field collapses when the person dies. So when the heart stops, the heart is a big generator of this field. And the brain stops, there's no electrical activity, and this field collapses. But for the shamans and for the Tibetans, there's another energy field. It's the light body. And this is what in the West we call the soul. And this is the part that continues beyond death. Now, in the shamanic traditions, this part of ourselves is the most important. To have spiritual health, to have your energy body be untouchable and in some way unaffected by the drama and the trauma of our lives. And the clearing of that karma, that trauma that turns into karma later on, became the focus of the shamanic healing practices. Not so much the physical body. How do you heal the energy body, which is the blueprint?
Yes.
That organizes the physical body, and then you find that the physical body follows. But in the West, of course, when you mention this to most scientists, they go, "What? What are you talking about?" And the doctors believe, of course, that if there's something wrong with the stomach, you operate on the stomach. If there's something wrong with the head, you generally go to a therapist, and if there's something wrong in your gut, you go to a GI doc.
Yes.
But these guys don't talk to each other. They're practicing not health practice. These are not health practitioners. And we don't have a healthcare system. We have a disease care system.
Yes.
And doctors that are trained in treating disease. But the shamans that I worked with were more intent on creating health. And they believe, and I believe, and this is what I teach our students today, that if you create the conditions for health, the energetic, the dietary, the emotional, the spiritual conditions for health, then disease goes away by itself. Then the body creates health. You don't have to treat the disease. You create health and disease goes away. And this is what I learned from the shamans. They were masters at practicing this.
How does a person know if their field is out of resonance? If it's imbalanced?
Well, generally, you know when you are out of resonance and when you are out of balance, and that's reflected perfectly in the field. So if you are out of balance because you produce too much acid in your stomach and you're getting reflux, you want to treat this with a plant that will cut the amount of acid or will treat the bacteria in your stomach that's causing the reflux. You don't need to go to the energy field. But if what's causing your GI imbalance is the fact that you have unfinished business with your children or your parents, then no amount of plant medicine or antacids is going to deal with it.
Yeah.
You've got to go at that point to the blueprint.
And so how does the person access the blueprint?
We're not really trained in the West to do that.
Right.
So this is what I train my students. So if you go to an acupuncturist, they're working with these same energy systems. More refined, these are the rivers of light that run right along the surface of the skin, whereas the field extends 3 or 4 feet. It actually extends to infinity, but you can feel it 3 or 4 feet around you.
Yes.
And the best thing to do is to discover your own field and explore it and see how you can expand it to become more expansive, or you can contain it if you are in a place with a lot of people and you need a little bit more of a safe environment. And so you can feel this simply by taking your hands and putting them on at the center of your chest, on your heart chakra, and then taking a couple of deep breaths, one hand on top of the other. And then beginning to move them away from your chest. Very slowly feel the edge of your envelope with the back of your hand. And And then I want you to turn your hands outward, so you're opening your palms up and you're sensing, you're feeling. You're not looking, you're simply feeling for the field. And it's almost like a water balloon or an energy balloon. And you can expand it and stretch it, or even bring it closer to you so you're more snug and protected. Or open it up if you feel expansive, and then reach around and see if there's any place that are kind of dented, or the fabric is torn, or where they needs to be repaired. And you can repair that with your hands simply by illuminating that, by brushing light over it and seeing how the field mends and repairs. And then noticing if there's parts of your field that are very tight against your body, and parts that are way, way out, and then expand them so they're all kind of at the same place, at the same level. And sense the rivers. We have these rivers of energy that are called the acupuncture meridians, that are these golden rivers of energy that flow right along the surface of the skin. You might be able to see these or perceive these. Or the chakras, which are these vortexes of energy. The first one right at your pubic bone, and the second one right below your belly button. The solar plexus, the third, the heart chakra, so strong. You can feel that chakra really easily. Or the throat chakra at the throat, or the third eye in the center of the forehead. Or the very top of your head, the seventh chakra, your connection to the heavens. But come back to your heart chakra. See how it's like a big funnel that opens up. And it's constantly exchanging energy with the environment. Because the heart chakra really understands the conversation with spirit, and with all of nature, which is spirit. And it feeds directly from nature. When you're out in nature, your heart chakra just opens up, because the currency of creation is love, and what we call love, which is actually a quality, and it comes into your heart chakra and it nourishes you. And if you can feel that nourishing you right now, you can do this, and then it gets digested. Our stomach does the physical digestion, but the heart chakra does the spiritual, or the energetic metabolizing of these energies, and they go through your body, and feel them, that energy that we call love of creation filling you, and going to you all the way to your feet and up your legs and your waist, and filling you from your fingertips also. Really filling yourself with this energy that we call love. And of course, if you were raised in the West, you think that love is something that comes from inside you. And if you work with the shamans or with the Buddhist masters, they'll tell you love comes from outside of you and inside of you. And they meet and they dance. And,
Yes.
And they meet right in this chakra, right on your luminous energy field.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That was really sweet. I experienced that while you were doing that. That was a really,
Thank you. Good.
Yeah, I could feel my field, and I'm going to do it a couple times today before I close my day as well.
Try it.
Yeah.
Because, before a physical illness manifests in the body, it's manifests in the field years before.
Completely agree.
And if you can clear it from the field, it's that stale chi, that heavy energy that's not in movement, that's kind of grayish and stale. If you can clear from your field, you don't have to process it through your heart in a heart condition or a heart event.
Agreed. Yeah.
So that's the energy medicine that I really wanted to learn about in the laboratory, but I couldn't find it in the laboratory.
Yes.
I had to go to the headwaters of the Amazon, but then my training in some of the brain sciences and in the mind were very helpful to understand how the energy medicine and the plant medicine could help you to grow a new body and not just repair the one that you have.
Yes. So let's
there's a big difference. The big difference between repair, which is what we do in Western medicine, and growing a new body or renewal. So renewal is natural and organic. Repair is costly, whether you're trying to repair a marriage or you're trying to repair a relationship or trying to repair your body or your finances. Whereas renewal is really far more pleasant
Yes.
and powerful. Yeah,
Yeah, I totally agreed. And when you feel that, it's a rejuvenating feeling, that renewal.
totally.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's when the spirit in inspiration comes through us, and you know it, you feel it. That's why all these inner practices are so valuable for us to do, because they do revitalize us.
Yep.
I think sometimes what happens, and I love your input on this, is that we get distracted from doing those very practices that enliven us.
Yeah, that's called self-destructive behavior.
Yeah.
Of course, and this is what we all grew up with. Do I have time to meditate today? Wow, I think after you've meditated for a while, the dialogue becomes, do I have time to go to the grocery store today? Because the only thing you do really is that at that point is your practice. And that's what I did in the Amazon for 25 years. I became a practitioner. I became a medicine person. And I didn't want to become a medicine person. I just wanted to write articles about it and become famous, but not become a shaman. That's
Sure.
hard work.
Sure.
But I did. I ended up doing my training. And I believe that all of us that are having this kind of dialogue like we're having, and our listeners, that we've all walked the medicine path in previous lifetimes. We've all tasted the medicine. We've all had a calling by spirit, and that we've chosen to be born together at this time to bring about healing to the planet and to the earth and to continue to dream this world into being, which is what this practice is called. And in the process, we have to dream our health into being, because if you're not healthy, if you have mercury in your brain or your thyroid's not working, you can't really meditate. So we have to really use that power of spirit to create perfect bodies that you can do in a very short period of time. And that's probably the most important thing that I learned with the Amazon shamans.
So we could go a couple different ways here, and one of the things that stands out to me is mitochondria and what is it. So I learned a great deal already before I met you, before I studied One Spirit Medicine and Power Up Your Brain, the other book that you wrote. But maybe you can express to people, first of all, what is mitochondria really, and then let's go a little deeper into it before we go on to a few other subjects.
Yeah, sure. So this is in my new book, in Grow a New Body. Grow a New Body really dives deeply into mitochondria. But let me make a segue from the Amazon. The Amazon people always were talking about the feminine life force. They would say, oh, your feminine, your life force is your mother life force. Is really diminished. And these people would get sick. Now, it turns out that the feminine life force is what we call mitochondria, which are the fuel factories in each one of our cells, and that we inherit only from our mothers. So it's the feminine principle. It's the feminine force that lives within us. So we inherit our mitochondria only from our mother. And the mitochondria are the fuel factories in the cell. They produce fuel. And they're actually very ancient bacteria that teamed up with other organelles to create the modern cell, the modern eukaryotic cell that looks for complexity and looks for creatures like us or eagles that, where you have cells that team up with other cells to create tissues, that team up with other tissues to create organs, that team up with other organs to create eagles. So mitochondria is what allowed life to become complex and multicellular. Before mitochondria, the only life that existed was cancer, because cancer basically are cells, primitive cells that are looking only to replicate, not to become complex beings like we are. They want to continue to replicate at top speed, and they're voracious feeders. They feed on each other. So this is for a very long time in the history of the earth, all that we had were these cells that were very similar to today's cancer cells.
Really?
Yep. And what happens with cancer is that we lose that biological imperative that mitochondria hold. Mitochondria establish that the very first rule is to keep the health of the organism. And then you look after your own health as a cell. So all of the 100 trillion cells in your body, they're all cheering in the same direction, and they put the health of the body ahead of their personal health, and they'll die to benefit the body. like skin cells, for
Yes.
example. They die every 7 days, so you get new healthy cells in your body. And when mitochondria are dysfunctional, cells don't know that they need to die.
Right.
Because mitochondria hold the death clock. They're in charge of the death clock of every cell. And cells that don't know that they need to die are breaking that biological imperative that the health of the organism is more important. So these are cancer cells. And these cells are very ancient. They're reverting back to a very, very primitive state where they can only burn sugars instead of ketones or fats. So the sugar diet, if you look at when I first went to the Amazon, all of the villages that I went to, there was no incidence of cancer, zero. And it's only when they begin to eat sugar that you have cancer appearing.
Wow.
So these cells, cancer cells, can only feed on sugar.
Yes.
And if you eliminate all of the carbs and all of the sugars from your diet, you begin to recover. And or you postpone the appearance of these conditions that we associate with old age. Really, really amazing to watch Amazonian peoples. The old generation living cancer-free, and the young generation that eat crap, junk food, living with all of the illnesses of the West, heart disease, cancer, dementias. Really interesting to science too. Very sad, very tragic also.
Yes.
So this is, mitochondria are the feminine principle, the life force. And what the shamans of the Amazon discovered were the plant products that would switch on the higher instructions in mitochondria and allow people to live a long and healthy life, disease-free. That would allow you to have your health span equal your lifespan, but that depended on the health of your mitochondria. It's an amazing story. You know, when they develop, because in a way, if you look at the story of humanity from an anthropocentric perspective, from our human perspective, we first appear about 2 million years ago. But if you look at it from the perspective of the bacteria, 90% of our DNA are the bacteria. So we're only 10% us. And if you look at their perspective, the mitochondria and the other bacteria in our flora and our biome, they created us so they could, go to the foothills of the Himalayas and pray at the source of the Ganges, or go try the cheese in France or the wine in Italy. So they've been around for a very long time.
Yes.
And what the shamans learned how to do was to upgrade the programming, from the programming of the species to the programming of the individual.
Let's touch on something that you spoke about quite a bit in Power Up Your Brain, and you've touched on also in One Spirit Medicine. And I'm assuming in your new book called Grow a New Body. And that is, what about this thing called the HPA axis? What is it, and why is it so important, especially in our culture?
Well, the HPA axis is really an acronym for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, HPA, which is what we call fight or flight. So the fight or flight, you perceive danger. It's not whether danger is real or not, it's whether you perceive it as being danger. And then this activates, it begins to send signals down to your lower brain that say, hey, this might be an enemy, or this lightning might strike me, and then you run. Or you're about to be attacked, so you fight or flight kicks in, you fight, you run. But when you can't do either one of these things, you get paralyzed. So paralysis is what happens when you can't fight and you can't flee. If you're 6 years old and daddy's abusing you and you can't fight and you can't flee, you get paralyzed. And then the system remains on for the rest of your life. And then you miss opportunities. You only see the dark side of things. You're able to find the dark cloud in everything that shows up. And in contrast, when you heal or repair your fight or flight, your HPA axis, you're able to see opportunities where everybody else sees only danger. Or you're able to find health in your own life and in your own body when all your doctors and everyone around you says that you're dying soon. So you have to repair the HPA axis because it's part of an old Neanderthal brain that really doesn't serve us that well anymore. And it's very hard for us to do that because every animal in nature can reset their fight or flight system, except humans. We have such a complex brain that function got left out of the hardware. It's a really important one.
Yes.
So if your fight or flight gets turned on because you have fright or big drama or there's childhood abuse, then you live in a world that's dangerous, in a world that you cannot trust people. And then, of course, all of these beliefs are self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yes.
It turns out to be true. But the shamans learn how to reset fight or flight, how to repair it. Because when fight or flight is switched on, your brain is flooded with the stress chemicals, and they're poisonous. And they inhibit any kind of spiritual experience. So the stress hormones are cortisol and adrenaline. And you can't meditate. You can't sit on a meditation cushion if your fight or flight is switched on because you're going to get angry with yourself and with how hard the cushion is and how your leg is hurting, and you won't be able to stop the mind from going 100 miles an hour. So we're kind of kept trapped and hooked on adrenaline when our fight or flight system is switched on. We have these overly caffeinated lives where we sleep badly, and if we do, we don't rest, and we're hyped up and tuned in and going all the time. And
right.
So this is the part of the brain that will inhibit every spiritual experience, and that we need to reset. So important to reset.
What I love about your approach, Alberto, is that you work at the not just physical level, although the physical being very important. When you take like in One Spirit Medicine, you've got that one page that reviews all those critical elements that you should have in your day, those super nutrients that fuel the body, which give you access to, do you call it the dream self, the dream body?
Yeah.
So maybe you can talk about that a little bit. And in this process, in other words, I understand, if you were, let's simplify this. If there were 3 essential things that you could share with someone right now, what are those 3 steps?
I don't share 3 essential things. I only share 1 essential thing.
Okay, good.
Can we limit it to 1?
Yes.
I could probably come up with a couple more, but there's only 1 really essential thing. And that essential thing is that you have to upgrade the quality of the software that you're running in your mind. So you have to access the higher order neural networks in your new brain, in the neocortex, and run the new software. You've got to download version 7.1 of the human software. And if you can begin running this, you create psychosomatic health, you create a world of peace. The world that you can live in where things are peaceful.
Good.
So people, here's an interesting factoid. A friend of mine teaches the Zen masters in Japan. So he's a New York Jewish guy, brilliant Buddhist scholar. And he goes to Japan and he teaches the priest. And he tells me that the priests are leaving their city sanghas or city temples, and they're moving up to the mountain monasteries because this is such a critical time for the earth. And they understand that by entering into deep meditation and finding a place of stillness, that they can bring healing to parts of the world that are in conflict, that they can help alleviate suffering, that they can start a standing wave in the energy field of the planet that will benefit humanity more than being in the city and teaching a young Japanese executive how to meditate. So if you can awaken these higher order neural networks in the brain, and we can all do that through neuronutrients, through the omega-3 fatty acids, through certain visualizations in my book, Grow a New Body, which is actually an updated version of One Spirit Medicine. What happens then is that your whole world changes, and you can take on the big things. Somebody asked me, what are you working on these days, Alberto? I said, I'm working on a new book, but I'm also working on ending world hunger.
Mm.
And they asked me, well, how are you doing that? I said, well, I write a check every month. I write a couple of checks, sometimes for $5 and sometimes for 500, depending on how business is. And then I sit down and create peace through my meditation and create abundance. And so we want to be able to take on these big projects, understanding that the practice of stillness, of shamanic stillness, and of journeying or meditation, if you're a Buddhist, is really a transformational technology. It's a disruptive technology. It can create peace in the world.
Yes.
But you need to have access to this high order brain that will also create peace in your body and health in your body.
So in our fast-paced culture with EMF, in other words, from cell phones and routers and all that stuff, let alone the default programs that are running in our old limbic brains, what do you suggest a person does starting today to address? In other words, let's say they can't just jump on an airplane, go to the Andes with you tomorrow. How do they start today, like, for example, with meditation, to start deprogramming that old fragged software, the one that has imperfections and defaults to it?
Absolutely. There's a couple of practices that we can do right now. One of them we did earlier on, which is expanding your field. And we need to become more expansive today. Not more expensive, but more expansive. And the next thing that we can do is to do a practice of stillness. So in the shamanic traditions, they don't talk about meditation. That's really an Eastern vocabulary. But they speak about stilling the mind, quieting the mind, very similar. And it's done through a practice of the breath, where you say to yourself on the in-breath, I am, and on the out-breath, my breath. So it's I am, my breath. And you do it silently, quietly. And then, when you take your last breath at the end of your life, you'll be able to leave with your breath. I am my breath. And in the interim, what it does is that it quiets the mind. So as you inhale, you say to yourself silently, I am. And then you pause at the very top of the breath. Take a pause there and watch the in-breath become an out-breath. And as you continue the out-breath and descend to the bottom of the breath, you pause there for a moment as the out-breath becomes an in-breath. I am my breath. You pause, I am my breath. I am my breath. And I like to do this 8 or 10 times during the day. So I get up in the morning and I take 15 minutes to be quiet, to meditate. And then during the day, a half a dozen times I'll go, I am for a minute, my breath. And that pushes a reset button. And I feel that I'm connected to all of nature, to the people that I work with, to every one of our listeners. So it reconnects us so that we don't continue to suffer from this great ailment of disconnection that is so common in the West today.
Yes. Yeah, and it's beautiful because I just listened to that process yesterday in preparation for our interview, and I did that. And when we talk about, or when you've read, let's say the average person, when they've read this phrase, the still small voice within, sometimes people don't hear a voice, but they feel something. We all feel spirit in different ways. And I could hear that little quiet self, and I could feel it, like it was just very gentle as I did the practice that you just shared. So this is
beautiful.
This is really powerful stuff, and you know how this goes. Like the biggest secrets in the world are the ones that are simple, they're free, they're profound. The masters, of course, practice it every moment of their day. They don't just do 1 hour of meditation; they practice mindfulness throughout the day, like what you were just talking about. And we all have that mastery. That's what you touched on in the beginning of our interview today, built within us. It's in our software. It's in our DNA. And that's what I love about your work, is it restores that. It revitalizes the knowings within us.
It's the simple practices that are really the most critical. And this is a simple but incredibly powerful one. And there are other practices. I think one of the important ones is a physical practice of your diet, what you put in your mouth. And there's a saying, be careful what you put inside your head because it takes such a long time to get it out, whether it be a belief structure or the food we eat. And today we need to eat organic. We need to drink clean water. We need to breathe clean air. Be sure you know where your food comes from and where your water comes from. And the other thing that we need to do is to give the brain nutrients that are not available anymore in our food. Because even if you buy your food at Whole Foods and it's beautiful looking, it's been grown on depleted soils. So it's lacking essential nutrients, essential minerals and vitamins and cofactors that are so important. And particularly important if you want to grow a healthy new body. So we know today that we can grow a new body. And the evidence for this is you, because you did. You grew a body once, and today these instructions are in password-protected regions in our DNA. And what the shamans of old at the Amazon particularly learned to do was how to basically hack your biology through your luminous energy field to switch on again these regions in our DNA that would trigger the production of stem cells in the body. So it's not magic coming and giving you a new body by putting a lot of green light into it. It's this epigenetic modification, your field and your beliefs triggering the expression of genes that produce stem cells that will help you grow a new organ, a new tissue, a new brain, even a complete new body.
Just awesome. So what about someone who's been with this for a while? Let's say they've studied your work or work like this, and they've tried the quote unquote growing the new body, and they're frustrated. They're not seeing results. What would you say to them?
Well, generally, people complain because they have to go hungry for a few days, but that passes after a couple of days. But there's another kind of, not hunger, but when you're hangry, which is you're hungry and you're angry. Hangry. Don't you like that word? Yes,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I love it.
So what happens is that your gut is so out of balance because of the candida that's taken over the gut. The candida is a yeast that proliferates and that loves sugar. So the truth of it, many of us have a sweet tooth. It's not you that is craving the sugar, it's them. They're the ones who want it. And they're yeast, and we really don't want to have any yeast in our system, but they have settled and populated our gut. So generally, when you find yourself getting hangry, it's because they're beginning to die off and they're producing toxic chemicals as they're decomposing their bodies that are affecting the brain. So the core and the key practice here is you've got to eliminate the yeast. You've got to eliminate the candida. And there are two ways to go about doing it. There are many ways. Some of them take a very long time. But the medical way is you get an antifungal medication. And that kills, 50 trillion candida in your gut, and you get really toxic as a result. The way that we do it is that we prepare another yeast called Saccharomyces boulardii, and it's a relative of the yeast that used to make bread, but that competes with the candida. So you can take this or preferably grow your own at home, and we have a free video that shows you how to do that in my website at the4winds.com. You grow your own probiotic with this yeast that competes with candida, drives it out of your system without killing it. You just goes right out of you, and then the boulardii, Saccharomyces boulardii, leaves of its own accord 5 or 6 days later.
Really?
And then you can do the process. But the problem, Paul, is that 100 years ago, we consumed 190 pounds 5 pounds of sugar per person per year. Today, we consume 190 pounds of sugar per person per year. So all of us have rampant candida overgrowth.
Yeah, agreed. And if you go back to what you were saying before about how the old cells are essentially cancer cells and they feed primarily, if not exclusively, on sugar, you got yourself something there where things grow amok in our system.
Well, you
And
don't want things to grow amok
yeah,
because that's generally pathology.
yes.
And candida, just candida has a place in evolution. We all have a little bit of candida, and the purpose of it is so when you die, it ferments you. It's like nature's garbage disposal system. It ferments you, but you don't want that to happen a day too early, right? So
Yes.
this is why we need to really detox, restore the balance in the gut, activate the higher brain, the higher order neural networks, and then you can take part in dreaming your health or dreaming the world into being.
That's just great. So if we talk about some of the stuff that we went through today. So when you create the conditions for health, that's the words that I believe that you used before. You are able to access the blueprint and talk about the blueprint just a little bit more, because I think what we forget, Alberto, is that we are luminous beings to begin with, and we're having a physical experience rather than the other way around, right?
That's the way to conceive of it. We're spiritual beings, luminous beings having a physical experience,
Physical, yes.
and not the other way around.
Right. And I think what happens, it's not just me, but if we observe ourselves and observe humanity, especially in the West, we're focusing on the physical as if that was the problem. If you've heard of David Hawkins, one of the phrases that I learned from him was, cause is not found in the physical. In other words, disease isn't right. caused by the physical, although an improper diet could contribute to that. Yes, no question. But the cells aren't.
Yep, absolutely. See, we associate correlation with causation. So we find that there's a correlation. Wow, you have a lot of cholesterol in you and you're having these heart events. So cholesterol therefore causes heart disease. So let's go on these statin drugs that are so toxic. That's not the case. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease.
Right.
your mindset, your how stressed you are, how much inflammation you have in your body. That's what causes heart disease. But it's correlated with cholesterol, and then we have a huge industry that develops around it when it's really, even the science that grows around it is bad science, is faulty science we're discovering today. Like the science 40 years ago that told us that fat was bad and sugar was good. And remember how many years we ate low-fat diet and low-fat milk, and today we're discovering that the sugar industry bought out these researchers, the sugar researchers, by giving them millions of dollars, and that fats are good and sugar is terrible. So yeah, you've got to really develop a wisdom of your own body, what your body asks you for. Let your body be your guide.
So speaking of fats, there's been some stories that were planted in the media. I say planted because that's my version. But tell me, what's your opinion on what's going on with the understanding of coconut oil these days compared to as recently as just up to maybe a year or two ago? Because the information, which was primarily good, especially through all the health channels, now suddenly has been debunked, quote unquote, by some health experts, quote unquote, that coconut oil is not as good as we thought it was.
Well, the first thing I do when I read one of these articles, I try to look at who funded the study.
Yes.
You got to follow the money. And if you follow the money, you're going to see that it's leading back to pharmaceutical companies, to sugar industry, to tobacco. There was time that the tobacco industry hired doctors to say that they smoked Kent because there was no direct causation between smoking and lung cancer. Of course, we took us so long to debunk that. The coconut oil increases your cholesterol, but it increases your good cholesterol and the ratio of good cholesterol to bad cholesterol. And then, so the whole coconut oil story is garbage. It's really a great product. If you eat too much of it, you eat 2 bowls of it a day, you're gonna drive your cholesterol through the ceiling. You don't want to do that.
Right.
But to eat a few spoonfuls a day is fantastic for your health.
Good, perfect.
read the original studies, and then you can read the Framingham Heart Study. I love the study.
Yes.
Biggest study ever done in the world on heart disease.
Right.
And they find that if you're over 65 years old and your cholesterol is over 285, which we believe is astronomical, that you outlive everybody else and you're in better health than everybody else. So yeah, be careful with, be careful with what the media offers you.
Yes.
And go to your sources. They're very good sources. There are very good books out there. I like to think my book is a good book, but Dr. Hyman's, Mark Hyman's, and Joe Mercola, these are really trusted sources. Go to a trusted source.
Agreed. So as we review here, one of the things that I'm really doing a lot of research on is glutathione. And maybe you can help us understand what glutathione helps us do, especially when you take the right kind. Like if you take standard glutathione, apparently the gut doesn't assimilate it properly. And so what does glutathione do for us? And how can you find the right kind to help with this?
Yeah, just a week ago, I finished doing a week-long program with Dr. Mark Hyman. We do these once a year. Very small program, only 10 people. He does the Western medicine and diet. I do the shamanic energy medicine and clearing the imprints from the field. And this is one of the big topics we spend a lot of time on, is glutathione. And glutathione is the body's master antioxidant.
Yes.
As well as a scavenger for any kind of toxins that are in your body. It has a big sulfur molecule, so it'll bind to toxins and move it out of your body. And all of us produce glutathione inside our cells, some of us better than others. Some of us don't have the full gene for complete glutathione manufacture. So about a third of the population. And if you don't have it, then you need to supplement it. What happens is that around the age of 35, our own innate production of glutathione begins to diminish. Just as we have all the hormonal changes that begin to happen after our reproductive years, our glutathione production goes way, way down. And together with it, the superoxide production. These are the two big, heavy energy anti-terrorist forces that we have inside every cell.
Yeah.
And if you can supplement glutathione, the way we do it in our Grow New Body programs is we do an IV supplementation. It's incredible because it renews the liver and the brain. And you can actually, in most cities in America, now call on a vitamin bar, and they'll come to your office or your home, or you can go to their place and get a glutathione injection. But it's usually low dose what they give you. Ideally, you want to get around 2,000 milligrams if you're doing it intravenous. If you do it orally, the regular glutathione is destroyed in the gut. But if you buy a type of glutathione called S-acetyl glutathione, it's been around for 3 or 4 years only. That will go into your cells. That will go through the gut barrier, into the bloodstream and into every cell, and help to detoxify your brain and every cell in your body. So I think everybody really needs to supplement with glutathione, but only seasonally. So only, for example, at the beginning of a season, when you do a mini detox, a 5-day or 1-week cleanse, then use the glutathione to help you get rid of the toxins that you've built up from the food, the water, the air, or even the improper recycling of hormones can produce a tremendous amount of toxins. So glutathione, boy, that's manna from heaven for the liver and for the brain.
Good. So now you just taught me something that I did not know, and that is the beginning of the season part. Now, why only for a short period of time? Is it because it's going to take out too much free radicals in the system?
Well, you need some free radicals in your system.
Yeah.
And at the same time, what I prefer to do is to do the glutathione and then give the body the precursors to glutathione, which is NAC, N-acetylcysteine, to get the body to manufacture its own. And then if you supplement it with the plants that switch on your genes that will help you to grow a new body, these plants like curcumin and resveratrol and sulforaphane from broccoli seeds, they will turn on your innate production of glutathione again, but you need to give it the NAC. So you need to kind of give it a taste of what it can be like by supplementing it. Then you give it the building blocks it needs, and then you turn it on with these keys that are the super nutrients. Then your body will begin to manufacture it again.
So to make sure,
I kick-started again the following season.
to make sure I understand that. Okay, so you've done your beginning of the season with S-acetylglutathione. It's also known as reduced glutathione. Is that correct?
No, S-acetylglutathione is really what you want to look for.
Okay, got it. So then do that for how long?
For a week.
Okay, so 1 week of the S-acetylglutathione. Then step back for how long before you do the precursors?
Well, see, this is in my book, Grow a New Body, which is
Yes.
that new edition of One Spirit Medicine.
Yes.
But you want to give it the precursor right at the same time, and you want to continue taking it. So the precursor is like, for example, if you are a bodybuilder, you need to supplement protein. Protein is what you need to build muscle, and NAC is what you need to make glutathione. It's a building block. And we don't get enough of it in our diet. So particularly if you're over 35, you supplement with the NAC, the body produces glutathione, and then it uses it little by little as it needs it, and not all at once, which is when we give it to it.
Okay. This is wonderful. Fantastic. So I guess
so it's like an aspirin, right? You want to save the aspirin for when you get a headache,
right,
and not take a little bit of it every day to avoid a headache.
Got it.
So the same with the glutathione. You want to wait till there's a toxic load, and then the body knows to release it and eliminate it. But it doesn't keep a high level of it free floating in the blood.
Good.
Unless you inject it or take an oral dose.
Beautiful. Fabulous. Thank you for that distinction, because that's very important. I was taking it more regularly than I should have, from what I gather. Now, I feel fantastic. That's the good news. But I now know I can tailor this for my usage and for the people that I care for. So to draw this to a close, and I so thank you, Alberto, for your time today. Maybe I was reminded by a friend that it's not so much the words and the facts and the ideas, it's the energy that we do in all these interviews. So maybe we can draw to a close with a little prayer to honor our luminous energy field and our bodies and even our genes, our DNA, what brought the history into this body.
Absolutely. Would be happy to do that. And, just to close, Paul, we're doing an experiment. We're part of an experiment today that we really did not sign up for. All the chemical experiments that are going on, and the GMO foods and Monsanto, and the quality of water and of air. So my experiment is when you do an experiment, you want the N, or the number of subjects, to be really big. Well, today we're doing an experiment where N is equal to 1. My experiment is called Alberto. Yours is called Paul.
Yes.
And I want to really encourage you to be part of the experiment. Don't be part of the control group, because they're getting sick, they're dying in ways that people never did before. So you can grow a new body. You can design the experiment to take your health with you for the rest of your lives. And then what we call spirituality is the inevitable, unavoidable result of a brain that's functioning at a really high capacity. So if you'd like to close with a prayer, we can do a prayer to the 4 directions. Would that be a good one?
Just beautiful.
Okay. So to the winds of the south, the spirit of the serpent, great mother, thank you, mother, for teaching us the ways of shedding the past the way you shed your skin. For teaching us the beauty way, to walk with beauty on the earth, with our belly and the belly of the mother, to touch everyone we touch with beauty. Aho! And to the winds of the west, spirit of the jaguar, thank you, mother. Thank you for teaching us your ways of fearlessness in these times of great fear, the ways of daring to go into those dark parts of the rainforest that few people dare to go to learn more about ourselves. Thank you for teaching us your lessons of impeccability and integrity. Teach us the ways beyond death. Aho.
Aho.
To the winds of the north, mother, sister, hummingbird, we call on you. Come, be with us. Teach us the ways of the nectar, of drinking only from the deep nectar of life. Teach us how to find stillness even in the midst of flight. Teach us the ways of the great journey, of the epic journey that we came here to do. Be with us. Aho.
Aho.
And to the winds of the east, the place of the rising sun, Mother Eagle, Sister Eagle, thank you, Mother, for flying high above us. Teach us to spread our own wings and always fly wing to wing with the Great Spirit, to open our eyes and see with clarity like you do. Teach us the ways of flight. Aho.
Aho.
And Mother Earth, Great Mother, thank you, Mother, for all of your blessings, your breath, your waters, your flowers, and to all our relations, the stone people, the plant people, the winged, the furred, the finned, all our relations. Aho.
Aho.
And Great Spirit, Father, Son, Creator of all, thank you for bringing us together, for allowing us to sing the song of life one more day, and to all of the lineages of luminous beings that have come before us and will come after us. We call upon you. Help us to dream a healthier, more healed world into being, a world where our children's children can be born into. Thank you. Aho.
Aho. Beautiful. Thank you, Alberto, and thank you, Great Spirit, and all the wise ones that are with us. Even if you don't know who your guides are, we all have them in our lives. And if I'm smiling right now, Alberto, because I know you know what I mean here. If we could see with new eyes the guides that are with us, people would be blown away. We would be astounded. Yeah. It's almost enough to bring tears to my eyes as I speak that.
We're not alone. We're not alone, Paul.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Thank you so much for having me as your guest. And and blessings to everyone who's been with us for this time and joining us in the practice.
Thank you so much, Alberto. Anything I could do to share your work with people across the world is a privilege, and it's an honor.
Thank you. And I'll send you a copy of Grow a New Body as soon as it's hot off the press.
Okay.
All right, Paul. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Alberto.
Bye-bye.
Lots of aloha to you.